Welcome to This Golfing Life, a podcast brought to you by Sounder. My name is Dan Davies, and each week I talk to a guest about what golf means to them.
It was simply the joy of shot making. It just felt like a fascinating thing to try and do, and I had no concept of how the great players did it, and that made it even more interesting. And so suddenly I'm sitting next to Gary Player in the backseat of the courtesy car for 5-10 minutes as we weave through St Andrews Town. You know, he's late for his start time, and he asked me a couple of questions. He said, "Jeremy, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to study psychology at university." He said, "Oh, the mind, very important. Yeah, you should do that." I could hit the ball off the high tee, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to put a few left-handed swings in there? Anyway, I practiced for a month, went on the course, and shot 40 for 9 holes, and thought, oh my God, my best score is 6 under left-handed. And best score was 1 under right-handed. So Happy Gilmore was no problem at all. And I can now do Happy Gilmore shaping it, left to right and right to left, but also off high tees up to about knee height. And I call the knee height one Kevin Peterson because it's down the wicket cross bat. They won't regulate the club head and the ball, but they will regulate the tee height.
This week's guest is one of the best trick shot artists in the world. He's a respected golf coach and one of the only players you'll ever meet to shoot under par, both left-handed and right-handed. He's also one of the nicest people in the game. So welcome to This Golfing Life, Mr. Jeremy Dale. Jeremy, when was it that you realised that you wanted to make golf your life?
Well, I wanted to for a long time. I remember reading Hogan's book, The Fundamentals, and he said, I made golf my life. And I thought, oh yeah, that's a good project. And Bobby Jones talked about golf being a conquest of yourself. So I knew I'd always play, but I didn't really think that I had either the ability or the opportunity to turn professional particularly. But I was handed a gift of an opportunity from a great friend of mine, John Garner, who I'm sure we'll talk about. And that was the moment when I felt like the burden of youth and young adulthood was lifted from me, and I got a job teaching golf, and it just completely set me free.
When did you take up the game? Where was it? And who sort of brought you to golf? Because I understand you've got 2 brothers who are also keen players and good players as well.
Well, I was the first one in the family to play, actually, and we grew up in Southport, which, as you will know, is a great golfing town. My mum had a shop in Hillside. And we went to a school at the end of Lord Street, for those that know Southport. And we got lessons, luckily, at Royal Birkdale, because one of the staff members knew somebody. So that Friday afternoon, hour long, you know, the pro just shouting at a line of us was great fun. But my first round of golf, first 18 holes, was at Southport Muni for 30p. And we walked in with my mate, Peter Griffiths, who was a captain at Royal Birkdale eventually a few years ago. And the guy said, "Do you want a green fee?" And I went, "Oh, no. I'd just like to play the course, please." My mate went, No, that's what they call it. And and the guy said, "That'll be 30p," just after decimalisation. So it must have been 73, 74, something like that. Went around at 116. They loved it, absolutely loved it, but only treated it really as a sort of summer game in between football, cricket, and all the like, and rugby eventually as well. So that's where I kind of got started. I always loved it. So that was a big deal for me.
What was it that you really loved about golf? What was it that captured your imagination as a boy and kept you coming back?
Well, I think it's the same as it is now. It was simply the joy of shot making. I wasn't particularly worried about a score as a kid, and nobody is and should be either. But it was the joy of having an idea in your mind about what you wanted the ball to do and making it happen, and the glorious physical sensation that gave you. I don't think any other. I mean, when you bowl a ball in cricket, it's the same if it's a wide or if it's a Jaffa, and the outcome is dependent on somebody else. But this was like, oh, this is completely in my control or not, and it just felt like a fascinating thing to try and do, and I had no concept of how the great players did it, and that made it even more interesting.
Were you aware of great players at that early stage of your golfing life, and who were those players that you looked up to and were sort of entranced by?
Well, shortly after, yes, is the answer. Shortly after my first round, the Open Championship came to town, and we got jobs. This is my first job in golf: clearing up litter. Beat waste we had T-shirts with beat waste on it. We're given these bags and told to roam around the course picking up litter, and of course we did a bit of that. But also we got the autographs and saw. I've still got them. I've still got a bag of a book of autographs with Gary Player, Johnny Miller. He was a real favourite. I mean, he was as a young kid, he was the young man that you would want to be, winning the Open Championship, looking $1 million and wearing those Rupert Bear trousers at the end. And I was there when he threw the ball away on the 18th, and he threw it. I thought, he's going to throw it to me. He's going to throw it to me. He threw it 180 degrees the opposite way. So into a heather bush. It was the weirdest celebration. Anyway. And then Seve, of course, played. I was there for his chip in '76 by the Open, the last Queen of the Open at Birkdale again, and then later in '84 as well, which we'll come to. But that was the thing for me. I saw Nicklaus, saw Weiskopf, saw all of them, and thought, well, this is an amazing thing. And even the clunking of the clubs and the big golf bags and the caddies and the whole hullabaloo around it was amazing. Obviously, it's a different event now, much bigger, but it was just amazing. And Miller played brilliantly, 66 on the last round. Saw a bit of that. So that was just another thing. And then obviously you could watch it on the BBC. And there were loads and loads of tournaments in those days. There was a whole, what they would call now a British swing, which, in those days we just called, well, there's a few tournaments this summer. And you'd be glued onto the TV and where are they playing this week? And they played great courses as well. So.
And there were some huge characters, weren't there? You mentioned Seve, and 1976 at Birkdale. That was the moment that he sort of broke onto the scene, and you said you were there by the 18th when he hit that incredible chip and run between the bunkers.
Well, that was 76. Yes, yeah. I was there by the 18th green, and we had 4 days and the practice days there. As what was I? An 11-year-old boy, just soaking it all up. And yes, they were characters, and I think some of that has gone missing a little bit now. Although you have more access to them now with social media, they're somehow less interesting. I don't know quite how they've managed that, but. In those days, you had the naissance of the European revival, Seve and all the Spaniards, and eventually Jose Maria, but Langer, Sandy Lyle, Nick Faldo, and Greg Norman as well. So it's quite international as well, Langer as well. And yeah, it just had something about it that younger viewers will maybe think, oh well, they're just reminiscing about the golden times. But if you look back in lockdown, you could see these half-hour Masters highlight shows, and you saw, a different kind of golf. It was harder. They were going in with longer clubs. There was more jeopardy around 13 and 15, and also I think that the sort of slightly there was slightly less of it. So it wasn't wall to wall all year. There was no sky. There was a real treat to actually watch professional golf on TV. And they certainly delivered, and the drama was heightened actually because of the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible, wasn't it? It was relatively recently that the European players started even playing in the Masters. I mean, the Masters was they didn't go over really in the 70s. Obviously, Seve won it in 1980 to become the first European to do so. But before that, the top players, there was very little European representation in the Masters, and none in the US Open pretty much, other than Jacklin, who won sort of in 1970, I think it was.
Well, I'm very lucky actually. I've interviewed Tony Jacklin a number of times, and that story is incredible. He changed professional golf twice, once as a player and once as a Ryder Cup captain. I've also interviewed Paul Way, who's a really interesting character who played with Seve in '83 and was on the winning team in '85. And it was like, oh, Paul, how many times did you play in the Masters? Oh, I never got an invite. Yeah. But he was one of the world's greatest young players for a very, brief period for 3 or 4 years. He was as good as anybody, and never got an invite. Unthinkable now. So yes, definitely times changed. And it took the Ryder Cup, I think, to change it. I mean, everybody's attitudes in America now is completely different to overseas golfers, because of the revival that was led by Jacklin and Seve as well. I mean, Seve was an integral part of it. And Jacklin talks about going to Lord Derby, and they talked about the European golfers being involved. And actually, that was Jack Nicklaus's idea. He said, "Well, I'm not doing it with Seve." And Seve was banned at that point because he wanted to put his funny.
Yeah,
So
he does. Yeah.
the whole cocktail of stuff that Jacklin unpicked and said, right, well, if you want to do this properly, we're flying Concorde, we're having the hotels that the PGA officials normally have, and you can sleep in the B&B down the road or the motels or whatever. And we're doing this properly. Cashmere jumpers. Well, for Florida, that wasn't so great, but Concorde and all of that, and a completely different thing. And I remember watching the '83 Ryder Cup from Palm Beach, where they lost by a point, and very easily could have won. I watched it in my halls of residence as a university student on the Monday after. And you can still get this on YouTube, actually. Harry Carpenter with a kind of Heath Robinson leaderboard behind him, explaining it all. And it was a half-hour highlight show, and nobody knew the result because you didn't get the result in the paper of the Ryder Cup. And it was only it's 40 years ago. I mean,
and very sadly, there's no footage of possibly the greatest shot ever hit, which was Seve on the 18th against Fuzzy Zeller when he hit that Tony Penner 3-wood out of the fairway bunker. But yeah, I mean, it's different times. But let's just fast forward a bit to 1984. You referenced that there. You caddied for John Garner in the 1984 Open at St Andrews, which has obviously become an iconic Open because of Seve's win. Tell us a little bit about John Garner and the role he played in your life, and then tell us a bit about that experience in '84 at St Andrews as a teenager. Were you at the time?
I was just, yes. Well, there's so many memories about that, but yes, John changed my life, and I'm a big believer in mentoring because of it. And you don't actually have to do that much, but if you're in a position to help somebody who you think has got the potential to do something, then you should absolutely do it. And that's what John did for me. He was extraordinary. We met him on a golf holiday a few years before, and my mum took us on that holiday with my brothers. And I said to John, do you fancy a caddy? I mean, do you need a caddy for a pro-am or something like that? Anyway, '84 came around, and I just left school, and he said, right, I'm going to have one last crack at the Open. Would you like to come up? So up to St Andrews we went. He had to pre-qualify at Scots Craig, played with Manuel Ballesteros. So that was pretty cool. And of course, bearing in mind what happened later in the week, amazing. Met people like Peter McAvoy, and I saw John qualify brilliant. And he played actually with Stephen Bottomley, who a few years later lost by a shot to John Daly, got within one on the last day. Anyway, so we played, and John got through, and he was brilliant. He showed me how to play. Actually, he wasn't very long, and he hit 3-wood everywhere. But his chipping and putting were amazing, and so was his attitude. He would just plod along, and nothing would faze him. And occasionally, I would say something, and he went, "Oh, yeah, right, Jeremy, that's right. Yeah, keep positive," and blah blah blah. Anyway, we're in the end. He got in, brilliant, and so we played, and he played. I watched, carried the bag, and the last day there were a couple of things that really stood out. And the third day, actually, we were in the courtesy car, just about to leave the practice ground, which was over past the old course hotel as it is now. Knock on the window, Gary Player. Like, crikey. He's going to chuck us out of the car, I thought. I'm sitting back, John's in the front. And he said, John, nice to see you. My tea time's actually in front of you. And I thought, oh, no, we're going to be late now. And he said, do you mind if I join you? He wasn't doing that at all. He said, can I join you? My clubs and my caddy have gone ahead. And so suddenly I'm sitting next to Gary Player in the backseat of the courtesy car for 5-10 minutes as we weave through St Andrews Town. And he talks to John for a bit, and Gary, John asked him, how are you playing? I'm playing great. And then we saw him snap up one off the first tee, and he wasn't playing that great. But he's late for his start time, and he asked me a couple of questions. He said, Jeremy, what do you do? How's your golf? And what are you up to? And I said, well, I'm going to study psychology at university. And he said, oh, the mind, very important. Yeah, you should do that. And and we finished, and off he went. And I was struck by the fact that a guy late for his start time, who's a superstar of the game, won everything, would have time to ask little old me a question in a high stress moment where he's not, he's a bit behind the clock. And actually, 30 years later, I performed at his golf event. in the Masters, near the Masters, Champions Retreat near the Masters, and he invited me. We'd met a few times. And that was, if you told the caddy in the car, don't worry, in 30 years' time, Jeremy, he's going to watch you. The caddy in the car would have gone, no, I think you've got the wrong guy. Anyway, that was one thing. And then third day, there was a cut as well. Like, unlike nowadays, there's a third round cut. And John needed a 5 and a 4 at St Andrews, so 5 at the road hole. He's level with the green on the right hand side for 2, and he's one of the best chippers and pitchers that you'd ever care to see, and that's how he made his name. Sure, it's a good round the green, sort of a Luke Donaldy kind of style of play. Anyway, in the rough, catches the heel, never looks anything other than it's going in the road hole bunker, and it did. Not only that, he couldn't hit the flag either. So we need a 5 and a 4 to qualify for Saturday, and suddenly he's gone from a position of, oh well, this should be okay, to, oh my God, we're in the weeds here. Anyway, the crowd go, oh, and then he pitches one out of the bunker to 30 feet, and the crowd knew what was happening. Not the score-wise necessarily, but they knew that was a great shot. He just kept it on the green, and then so they went, a little bit of a ripple, and then he held the putt. The whole place went. They just watched the typical St Andrews scenario played out. I mean, you played it, and you know what a nightmare sometimes. Short game off tight lies and situations where slopes are the hazard. And it had a big effect on my ideas about course architecture as well, and what poor hazard rough is rather than slopes. Anyway, amazing moment. Made it 4 at the last, and there we were in the last day. So. That was a huge thrill just to hang out, and then obviously the great finish as well. Watson hitting one up against the wall and Seve holding a birdie putt on 18th. But the roar when Seve's putt went in was astonishing. It was like he'd been adopted by the Scots and the Brits, and he was genuinely one of us, even though obviously he was from Spain.
I felt that very strongly. I went to see the Suntory World Match Play final when he played Sandy Lyle in the early 80s. And I was really struck by the fact that there were more people pulling for Seve, but he was just such a charismatic, magnetic, sort of almost mythical character, wasn't he? He had so much skill, had so much flair, had so much charisma. He looked great. He swung the club beautifully. And you
also never knew what was going to happen either. That was part of the excitement. It was like, oh right, this is daring as anything. It doesn't matter where he hits it; he can get out of it. It's brilliant box office watch.
Yeah.
My friend Mike Clayton, who's golf course architect, played with Seve in the European Tour and on the European Tour for years and years. He said, there's 3 courses where only a couple of players have ever won. And one's St Andrews, the other is Augusta, and the other is Royal Melbourne. Who's won round all 3? Seve. Who designed or loved or revered or based all his design principles on all 3? Mackenzie. So really interesting that. And Mackenzie, there's a great story in the book, The Spirit of St Andrews, which is here somewhere. I've got it somewhere. There we go. Buy it. It's brilliant. You'll understand course architecture a lot better if you buy that. There's a brilliant paragraph in there where Mackenzie watches Hagen from behind the 17th, and Hagen, was in the left side of the fairway and hit this big rope hook onto the green, a bit like Seve did in '84, but more shape. And he went, "Oh, I want to watch that guy," and he went and watched him, and he thought, "Right, this guy can express himself." Because Hagen would make mistakes as well. He was sort of modern day Seve and greatly popular as well, and a great character. Hired a Bentley and parked it outside the clubhouse at Deal and changed his clothes in there because he wasn't allowed in the clubhouse. Amazing.
Yeah.
So the link between great players and great courses, I think, is interesting and goes back to my original love of golf came from shot making, and the stage is really important. The questions that you get asked are really important. If it's soft and not very interesting and there's loads of rough so that nobody can play it. I mean, anybody can design a course that nobody can play. The gift is to design a course that gives the greatest pleasure to the greatest number, and is in Mike Clayton's where it's a difficult 70 but an easy 90.
Yeah, very good. Yeah,
I love that idea. Nobody turns up for punishment. That's what Mackenzie's ideal was. So he put bunkers in the way to challenge good golfers. Let's make it interesting and playable for everybody else.
You're listening to This Golfing Life, a Sounder podcast. Find out more about Sounder at soundergolf.com. But it seems that golf course architecture has almost come full circle, in the sense that in the 90s and the 80s, the British were obsessed with American-style courses. We saw Augusta on TV, and we wanted that level of conditioning. We wanted that level of perfection. But actually, what's happened in recent years is that the appreciation of British traditional-style golf, links golf, natural golf. I mean, I play at Royal North Devon, which is, the sort of apogee of natural golf in many ways. But that appreciation has really come back, particularly in the States. It's been driven in the States. And now you're seeing more courses being built along the principles that Mackenzie would have recognized.
That is 100% right. With the bulldozer. Bulldozer, the worst thing that happened to golf, I think. After the war, they all made, these American-style corridor courses. Robert Trent Jones, all of that lot. And then in 95, Crenshaw and Core built Sand Hills on this amazing bit of land, which looked like Dune-like in Nebraska. And suddenly everything changed. And what you see now, as you absolutely 100% say, is these natural courses. I never played Royal North Devon. We must arrange that.
Yes, we will do.
I teach at Feldon Valley, which is a parkland course, but I'm a member at Cleve Hill, which is exactly that. It's designed by old Tom Morris, and helped out along by Alistair Mackenzie, who changed 4 holes. And it is exactly like Royal North Devon, as I understand it. Plenty of width, but also wind and really interesting natural golf. 2 greenkeepers, a lot of sheep and cows to eat all the rough. You'll always find your ball, but you won't always make a great score. So yeah, no. And what you notice now is that the best golf course architects, guys like Tom Doak, Gil Hands, Mike Lane and Ben Crenshaw, the odd exception, but Bill Core, all of these guys, they're not players now. They're not players just turning up and giving a signature to the course. They are proper architects who've studied, maybe with Bill Core, and then set up on their own, like Tom Doak has done. And you look at all the really great natural courses now that are being produced, and you go, finally, we've arrived now back where the golden age set us up. And then none of the lessons were learned from sort of 1950 to 1990. None of the lessons of the golden age were recognized. And then suddenly, Mackenzie's book became the Bible, and thank God for that. And you're right, the British style of golf is now revered. I mean, again, I'll come back to Mike, who went, I know best. So he says, where's the best golf? Now, the other Brits won't like this, but he says England, and he knows what he's talking about when he says England. And apologies to the Scots and the Irish and maybe the Welsh as well. They've got great courses, but actually what it means is not that they haven't got great courses, because they have. It means that England has the best variety. So you look at the London Sandbelt, the Sunningdales, and the 3 Ws, and Wentworth as it was, perhaps. But not so much now. And you go, oh yeah, actually that sort of golf in Scotland isn't so much. They haven't got so much that. They've got great links courses. They promote it better. So hats off, and nothing better than the trip to Dornoch and Brewer and Durness and things like that. But England has bigger, more quantity, so this style of golf is the best, and it's the best value and accessible to anybody. And this is one of the things I love about Cleve Hill. You share the hill with common land. You share it with cyclists and kite flyers and dog walkers, and everybody rolls along. And it's common land, accessible to anybody. You can pay 30, 40 quid for a top 100 in England course. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the Royal North Devon's also on common land, and has sheep and ponies and kite flyers and walkers, and I love that about it. I'd love to go to Cleve Hill. The link's in the sky. I've seen so many pictures of it, and I'm so glad that it's been brought back, or it's been saved, because it had a difficult time a while back. Let's just rewind a little bit, Jeremy, because you mentioned there that you studied psychology at university. What in 1984, when you were 19, 18, something like that, on the brink of going to university, what handicap were you playing off?
Oh, it wasn't that good. I might have been an 8 handicap, something like that. So I had a lot to do, and without John's help, after university, I would never have turned professional. He saw something in me that I didn't think I had, And I think he thought, I think he could see it in me from how I caddied and how I made it all about him. I wasn't, it was like, I'm a waiter. I'm going to do these things for you. In the car, we'd say, right, Jeremy, tell me what you're going to do for me. And it's like, okay, well, this and this, keep the balls, clean, and wet the towel, and keep the clubs clean, and carry the bag, and be on time, and turn up, and there was a whole list of stuff. And he could see, I think, that I could be a good coach. And without him, I would never have got a job as I did for 3 months in Iceland to see if I liked it. After uni, he said, right, I've got a job. He was the national coach of the Icelandic amateur golf team. And he said, right, I've got these 4 clubs that you can live in the clubhouse at this place called Borgarnes, which is just north of Reykjavik. Teach at Akranes. And there were 2 other clubs that I went one day a week to as well. They gave me a larder. At one point, the brakes failed on that. And it was 3 or 4 months of, right, you're going to teach golf at this place, and let's see how it goes. And after it went fairly well, he said, right, I've got another one for you. Literally, I got the phone call, and I was a graduate trainee at a market research agency. Do you want to be the assistant professional at the Amsterdam Golf Club?
Yes.
I said, no, I've got a job now. And I told my mum, and she went, of course, you're going to phone him back and say yes. And so I did. And it was with a girl who, again, helped me massively, a girl called Marianne de Boer. And she was the first Dutch lady professional. I'd met her because I'd also caddied on the ladies' tour for Maureen Medill, as she is now. And that was great as well. And she'd become an excellent commentator, had a great life in golf. Marianne helped me, and I literally stayed with her for a bit and then found some lodging and launched myself. And then after a year of that, I played golf with one of the members of the Amsterdam Golf Club, but he was general manager at a place called Weiskopf, which is in Den Haag. And sorry, The Hague, I'll slip into anyway. And a busy club there. And that's when I saw the model that I wanted to follow for being a golf professional. I would absolutely call myself a golf professional rather than a professional golfer. But I went to this place, Rijswijk, and Rennie van der Graaf was his name. And there was a fellow called John Wolf, who was the head professional. And I met my wife there. I met my best friend there, Michael Unsworth, who's still out there, a wonderful player. And coach as well, and we still see each other. We're still in touch after 35 years, and there was great assistance there, and we coached a lot of groups, so we worked together in a way that I've never ever seen before. Clinics, instead of a golf day being people going to play, few people would go and play. And then the beginners would come to us. We'd have 30 beginners and 3 of us, and we'd split into groups of 10 and rotate them around, chipping, putting, and full swing. And John did a show. John was the model of John Wolf. And he said, he didn't tell me really, but he had a show. He was a good player, and he'd win events. Holland was like a region for Britain. So he'd win national events and play well, playing the Caroline Open, and he was really good. And then he would fill his lesson book, and he did a show as well. And he had some sponsors, and he would speak at dinners, and he would take members away for holidays. And he's still on Dutch TV, speaking Dutch, as we all did. And he's English, and he's got quite a heavy English accent, but they love him. And he describes it really well. So he was like, okay, so he's doing lots of things. So I said to myself, right, try and be a good player, try and be a good coach, and try and put a show together. And then he says to me, I'm not feeling well. There's this guy coming. He's one of my sponsors. I'd really like you to give him a lesson if you can. He's left-handed. And I'm left-handed for writing. And as a kid, I turned myself into a 2-footed footballer because my coach said, "Oh, you don't kick with your left foot. Why not? You'd be better as a central midfielder if you did." So I kicked a ball against the wall with my left foot all summer. And do you know how many times he said that to me? Once. Yes. That was the kind of kid I was. I was relentless. And anyway, I thought, right, put a show together, and I could hit the ball off the high tee. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to put a few left-handed swings in there? Anyway, I practiced for a month, went on the course, and shot 40 for 9 holes. And thought, oh my God, It felt great.
Is
It
there
felt great.
Is there something in the fact that, I mean, I remember when I was growing up, people would say, it's good to have a strong left hand in the swing. And actually, if you're left-handed, and like you said, you write left-handed, and I'd heard that, and I wonder whether it was an old wives' tale about actually having a stronger left hand in a right-handed swing. Does that carry any water or not?
Well, they never say it about tennis backhands, do they?
No, and interestingly, Rafa Nadal played right-handed up until the age of 12, and then he's switched.
I think it's a bit of a wives' tale, actually, because it's such. I mean, I can't tell what you're feeling, and you can't tell what I'm feeling, and I would say it's a two-handed game, so they both matter. But if you make them equal, if you've got one that's much weaker than the other, that's probably not such a great thing. What I would say though is that the swing is kind of a mirror image. If you want to hit the ball straight, John Jacobs talked about this. Not going to work great on the podcast, but never mind. Apologies for those that are just listening. A right-handed, the swing's a mirror image on either side. What I learned was a left-handed backswing. We'll do this so that left-handed backswing like that is actually the same as a right-handed follow-through.
Yeah.
And if you want to say the club should follow a path which goes from inside the line, parallel to square and back inside the line again, that would hit a straight shot if your grip's good and the club face is also square. So the line of the swing in to square and back to in again, you can see that very clearly on when I demonstrate right and left-handed being the same thing. So that was an interesting thing. I'd say that's more important really than right hand dominant. And when people say, "Oh, we use too much right hand," it's like, no, you just use it wrong.
What was the hardest thing when you started playing left-handed? Because I understand that you're one of the few players to have broken par left-handed and right-handed, and like you say, you shot 40 on your first 9-hole round left-handed, which I'd be happy with, having played 45 years right-handed. But what was the hardest thing? What was the hardest aspect of the game you found, having played right-handed all your life, trying it left-handed?
Just being new at it, really. I mean, I also pressure because I signed up with the Dutch PGA, so I hadn't qualified with the British PGA. But so I had to qualify with the Dutch PGA, and I had to learn the language at which I was a beginner, and I had to do the playing ability tests. And I was a beginner at that. I'd made myself into a beginner as well. So the pressure was actually a great thing, looking back on it. But not at the time. There was like, okay, can I do this in 3 years?
Did you qualify as a PGA professional left-handed?
Yes. Yes.
Did you not think about qualifying right-handed because it just might be a bit easier?
I was playing worse right-handed. See, that was all part of it as well. I was really struggling right-handed, so that was part of it. And I turned through the ball left-handed much more easily. And I could feel that this was going to be better. But it's just a question of when. Anyway, I shot 75 in a professional event in Holland, a one-day event within 2 years.
That is extraordinary. And what was the problem? What was the problem that you were having right-handed? Was that mental? Was that physical? Was it technical?
No, it's technical completely. I think the game is way more technical than it is mental. I mean, you can really,
I beg to differ on that, but
well, it can become mental. I'm not denying that, but that's not to deny. But if you've got a technique in which you are completely confident, then no amount of being put off is going to change that. There are situations, obviously, where you might be out of your comfort zone, but I can hit. Even now, I can hit a right-handed drive off a high tee, which is 4.5 feet in the air all day on a corporate event, on a Buy My Drive or a charity event, because I do that in addition to the shots. We might have a show in the beginning, and I'll start it down the right-hand side. I draw it back, and I won't miss the fairway all day, and I'll have maybe 20 shots with a big gap in between and hardly a practice swing. And I just know what I'm going to do, and I'm not nervous, even though there's quite a lot of riding on it because they're buying my drive. But put me in a tournament on the first tee, I'm more nervous because I don't quite know with certainty what's going to happen. So, yes, I think your mental state reflects the quality of your technique and your trust in it. So,
could you not tee in a tournament situation and playing right-handed? Is there anything stopping you from teeing off on a 4.5 foot tee?
Yes, there's a rule. One, I have ruined my life with this thing all about they won't regulate the club head and the ball, but they will regulate the tee height. So 10 centimeters, 4 inches is your lot for that. So there is actually a rule,
Right?
So
Because I've been watching the Winter Olympics, and like a lot of people, I'm thinking, like, how do people do that for the first time? Particularly where they're, like the snowboarders, and they're getting huge air and doing all these somersaults and all this sort of stuff. I mean, with the trick shots, presumably just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of practice. But are there certain parts of your routine that are your design and your invention that you've come up with? I know that you're brilliant on the Swiss ball, and I've seen videos of you balancing on a Swiss ball, hitting a perfect driver, off a huge high tee, might be 6 foot high or whatever it might be. Which are the tricks you're proudest of, and the ones that perhaps you've invented?
I would say the thing that I've added that has never been done before is the switch hitting. Being able to do everything left and right-handed, and people going at the end, are you left or right-handed? And that to me is the highlight of my show, or what I'm adding to the whole thing. And obviously, it also has an instructional value. So I do put in a little bit of instruction. It's entertainment mostly, but it's also education too. Golfers want to know, how are you doing that? Questions are all the same. So this idea of the swing being a mirror image, I can put that in, and that's very visual, and people go away going, oh, he hit left and right-handed, but he also explained it as well. So that is one thing. And you get gifted trick shots, like the Tiger Woods juggling commercial. I do that, almost exactly. So catching the ball, bouncing up and down, and then hitting it away, and talking about Tiger as well. And Happy Gilmore, and when I was in Australia for a while, my wife is from Australia, so we moved there in about 98, 99. And some kids went, oh, can you do a Happy Gilmore? And it was like, well, what's that? I hadn't seen the film. Don't worry, I have now. And they said, oh, he runs at it. And it's like, oh, well, I played cricket. And my favourite shot, I was a bowler who thought he could bat. And my favourite shot was coming down the wicket and getting to the pitch and hitting it over mid on, sort of a slightly pulled hook. And so Happy Gilmore was no problem at all. And I can now do Happy Gilmore shaping it, left to right and right to left. That's, again, the angle of the run-up determines that. But also off high tees up to about knee height. And I call the knee height one Kevin Peterson because it's down the wicket cross bat. And that was him. Beautiful. Flamingo finish and everything. It was great. Yeah, and the two-handed one, with, there's a club in each hand. John Wolfe taught me that. And he could do that really well. He had a lovely show. And that was the first one I saw. And part of the left-handed thing was, right, well, I want to do a show, but I don't want it to be like John's. I want it to be different. And the left-handed and right-handed thing puts me in as one of the top in the world without being, without bragging. And nobody else has done that. So it's a different show. And the Swiss ball one. So you see, we nick stuff. The Swiss ball was a guy called Ben Witter, who I met at the World Golf Trick Shot Championships, and he sadly died now. And he had cancer at the time, and he lasted an awful long time. He had cancer in his late teens, early 20s as a college guy, and he died when he was sort of 50, early 50s. And he came to the 2005 World Championships, and he stood on this ball. And he did stuff that nobody did. He had a down and up shot as well, where he'd hit down on a high tee shot, about 4 foot high, down with an open face. I call it a slice in a vertical plane. So the ball goes down and spins back up again in a straight line. But actually what it is, it's a slice, but just turned 90 degrees. So he was really cool. In fact, I thought he was the best one, actually. So you copy stuff from other people, but I think the left and right-handed that is my thing. I wouldn't claim to have invented any shots particularly.
When you go out and play golf, I mean, you mentioned about struggling with your right-handed game, which is how you started to play. Do you prefer to play left-handed or right-handed? What do you go to instinctively?
I've not played right-handed since I switched. I play left-handed now. My best score is 6 under left-handed. And best score was 1 under right-handed. So.
Well, there you go.
Ask me if I've had a hole in one.
Have you had a hole in one? Both.
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I've had 9. I have a 9th one this year. But 2 right-handed, and now 7 left-handed. Had a wonderful one on at Brancaster in March this year, last year rather. and helped me get back from 4 down to all square on the last with our club champion, Rory Brown, brilliant player, and I had no right to halve that match. But we played Brancaster in a gale, first time we played there, 16th hole, downwind, started it on the left. We thought it had gone over actually, and then it just it disappeared. I thought, oh damn, that's gone through the green. I thought that was a good play. He said, no, I think that's gone in. So that was another one. So yeah, 7 left-handed holes, one, and
that is fairly impressive to say the least. What do you make of this? Social media and trick shot. Golf social media, the trick shot has become a staple part of it, but it seems to be a very different discipline or a very different form of trick shots. What you and the likes of Jeff Barrington and Swain and Noel Hunt before you're very much about pleasing a crowd and outdoors and actually hitting real shots. Now it seems that social media, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or whatever, just seems to be people hitting ping pong balls or airflow golf balls into cups.
It is amazing what people will watch, Dan. But thankfully, yes, I've got my preference is absolutely for live entertainment, and I think it'll come back. COVID, dented our business and also the ability of people to come back, and as have Zoom calls to a certain extent. Meetings and conferences and stuff like that also would have taken a hit. But I think a live act. The one thing you cannot get from watching a video of my show and Paul's and Jeff's is an appreciation of how good the strike is. It's very much alive. It's so much better live. And what I never wanted to be was somebody who filmed stuff all day, did it once, and put it up on YouTube. So I have got 2 YouTube channels actually. I started them both last year to help my coaching. So I've got a channel called Jeremy Dale's Golfing Curriculum, and my theory on that is that there are 20 shots that you need to learn to be able to play. So if you can't play a bunker shot, it'll cost you. Can't hold a short putt, it'll cost you. Can't chip, it'll cost you. So let's just start with all of those. Obviously, driver is one of 20 shots. And I think that's a really strong concept, and I've had fantastic results with it. I'll give you an example. One of my pupils, Jeremy, he's in my Saturday clinic. He started off 5 years ago with an average score of 106. He's come every month to my Saturday clinic, so it's a group lesson. We've played together, we've been on tour together, and he 106, and he shot 76 last year.
Wow.
Yeah. Just by following the curriculum and sticking with it. And so this stuff isn't magic. It's not witchcraft. It's just learn the 20 shots and your scores will come down because you won't have any weaknesses. And people don't understand. They're all after power and shallowing and, bowing the wrist. And it's like, no. But you got to hit the shots, which brings me back to my the joy of shot making. Can also be an asset when you're scoring. So I've got that channel, and I've also got a trick shot channel, which, to be honest, is more about Google rankings than it is about views. Because I have had one video that's had 500,000 views, so that's nice. It's more about making me more searchable.
It just seems to me that a lot of these guys, they're impressive, that, hitting these sort of vertical flop shots into small cups. But the thing that struck me about watching quite a few of them before, doing this podcast with you, Jeremy, is these people must have an awful lot of time on their hands. I mean, literally, they've got to be doing this all day, every day to capture that one shot that goes in.
Well, YouTube is a business now. You can get months honest. In fact, I am now earning. I got my first payment this month from YouTube.
Congratulations!
A month, which is good. And it wasn't a lot, so don't worry. But only 3% of channels get monetized. But if you get enough views, you can do quite well. So it can become in time a full-time job. So I'm not anywhere near that level, but it takes time. YouTube takes time. You need to build an audience. I think that's what that stuff is more about. But I never wanted to be the sort of let's do it in the comfort of our own home kind of trick shot artist. I want an audience. There's so much better like that. And audiences genuinely are astonished at what can be done with a golf club.
And you're listening to This Golfing Life, a Sounder podcast. Sounder's golf gear is designed from scratch and tested on the course. Get 20% off your next basket at soundergolf.com using the code POD20. That's POD20. And you've, talking of audiences, you've played and you've done your shows and your trick shots in front of some incredibly famous and fine players. We talked about Seve at the beginning of the podcast. I mean, Seve used to do a few trick shots, didn't he? There was one he liked to hit the shots off his knees, and he also had that one, I think, where he scooped the ball in the back of his ping putter and then sort of flicked it over his head and hold putts like that. Of the many top players who've watched your show, who's had the most aptitude in terms of being able to do some of the things that you're able to do?
I would say it depends on the shot a little bit. Padraig Harrington, I've met most of the Europeans, which has been an amazing thrill. But Padraig was fantastic. Instantly asked me questions about, oh, hi, I'm Padraig. Yes, I know. You just want to know. I know. But he said, introduce himself, and he asked a question about me. I thought, okay, that's a fantastic test for celebrities to, just show a bit of interest. And he so did. He was brilliant. And Happy Gilmore was what he was interested in for increasing his power. And this was something like 12, 13 years ago at an event in Portugal. And we had a real good chat about it. So he was pretty good at that. Although I'd back myself, I think, against him, but who knows? Nick Faldo was really interesting because he was trying to figure out the swing plane on the high tee shot. He said, well, okay, you've got to flatten your plane, haven't you? So you've got to stand them up more upright. So if I swing like that, then that should bring the club back higher. And yeah, okay, I can feel that. And he got it away. He did it. And you kind of expect that from him. You'd say, okay, you're an analyst. Yes, you'd be able to work it out. Surprisingly, Monty was quite good until a certain tee height. Because he was more of a rocker, a blocker, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So, he's less turn. So once you get sort of 4.5 feet, that's not going to work. But he was, he's got great hand-eye coordination, as they all have. And so I did a trick shot with Seve, actually. I had this clinic in Dubai at the Desert Classic. And I had a poster, which I nicked. They had a poster of Jeremy Dale, trick shot artist, with Seve Ballesteros. And that was the Caltex was the sponsor, and it was an ugly old thing. And I thought, oh, I've got to have that. Me headlining Seve's, crikey. Anyway, it's an ugly old thing. I got it home and then I threw it away, and then he died. And it was like, oh no, you really should have hung on to that. So anyway, he was late, so I started, and he was supposed to go first and me second. So I started, and then he arrives, and I'm hitting this shot left-handed off a high tee, and it's windy. And he's right there. It was like literally 2 yards away. And I said, that'd be great. They've come for you. I know that. You know that. The stage is yours. He said, no, you carry on. Maybe I'll learn something. Anyway, the ball fell off. I couldn't get it back on because my hand was moving. My hand was shaking so much. Anyway, somehow got it on, got the shots away, and then did my thingy, and then he took over. And then during his clinic, he was going to hit one up his knees. And I thought, right, I'm going to run around and join him. Him right-handed, me left-handed. 3, 2, 1, crowd off. And I absolutely killed mine straight down the face, absolute rocket, and he topped it. And he turned to the crowd, and there was a flash of a camera. Somewhere there's a photograph of this, but I've never seen it. But he turned to the crowd and said, oh, which one was mine? Like, no, I'm just beating you. No, you can't do that. He's good. And then, we kept bumping into each other. He was always delightful.
He's obviously, there's some amazing videos of him playing off his knees from underneath trees and things like that.
Oh, he could do it. Yeah, I mean, he could do it.
Do you find, is there anywhere on the golf course, given the amount of shots that you can hit, is there anywhere on the golf course that you cannot extricate yourself from? Or have you, when was the last time you had to take a penalty drop, put it that way?
Oh, I have taken a few of those, but I actually do think that is one of my strengths. I'm not a great player by any means, but what I can do is that, and there's a couple of escapes that I want to tell you about. Really early, actually, before I'd even started doing trick shots or turned professional, I was a member at Goring and Streatley, and I remember I was 17th hole, I topped my tee shot, and it went to the side of a tree, and there's a tree sort of, I don't know, 80 yards down the fairway, and it was right next to it, so I couldn't stand and hit, but it was sort of slightly teed up in the rough. So I knelt down, and I thought, hang on a minute, I could do this. Anyway, hit an absolute rocket, went down. The 17th goes straight down the hill. I think I got far enough down to hit the green at 3, made a 5. And people were saying not so much how did you do that, but also what was the tee? What were you doing on the tee shot? Because I followed one quite easy shot with one really difficult one and pulled off the difficult one. So I knew already that I had a reasonable horizontal swing. So that is the same shot really as the high tee shot. Anyway, there was another one where I needed a 3 to get my qualification score in Holland, and I'd started with a birdie, and then I'd hold a good putt for a par on the second, and then hit a putt far too hard, and it had gone in on the third. So I'm 2 under after 3, and I'm 2 years into left-handed, thinking, right, I've got to make this. Anyway, I'm leaking oil the whole way around. I come to the last hole at the Salenzer Golf Club in the Netherlands. Great little course. And it's into the wind, and it's 220 yards with a tiny green, and I literally shank it. I mean, I had it 20 yards left of the green, got enough distance on it to roughly get a pin high, and it's under a tree root. It's like literally in the V of a tree root. And I look at it and go, oh no, I've blown it. That's no good. I can't do this. And then I thought, hang on a minute. I had this really sharp-faced McGregor Muirfield sand wedge, and I thought, actually, if I just chop down and land it there and run it up that bank and across the green, that actually could give me a putt for it. And the more I looked at it, my mum was caddying, and she was getting, really antsy by now. It's like, and she knew the score, and it was like, oh no, I'm going to blow it in front of mum. She's going to be furious. And it just came out beautifully. It was like a little wristy chop. And in it went to the bag, rolled around. I thought I'd hold it actually, and it went 6 feet past, little right to left. I putted right-handed at that time with my elbow out, and Nicklaus style. Anyway, that putt went 6 foot, went dead centre, and I've done it. And that was the shot of my life for a career, really, because these chances didn't come up that often. So recovering, if you give me a mid-iron and ask me to punch one low and shape it, then I can. There's a video about that on a golf curriculum. It's brilliant. Watch it. It's brilliant. Anyway, I can do all of that. But playing, I mean, my dad used to say my brother plays like an accountant and I play like an artist. So I'm all over the place, but I can come back sometimes.
A friend of mine said that actually. He said that your brother used to get it around, and he's now a good scratch golfer, isn't he?
Oh, brilliant! It's very depressing for me to have spent my whole life in golf and tried absolutely everything and still not even be the best golfer in my family.
But it is amazing, isn't it? You put a golfer in a difficult situation. They're playing out of trees, and there's a tiny little window between the branches, and more often than not, a player will be able to pull off that shot than they will from standing in the middle of the fairway, with a 7-iron into the green and nothing to be in your way. I mean, you've studied psychology. How do you sort of fathom that?
I'm very good friends with a fellow who has got an answer to this, actually, a guy called Kendall McWade, who's a Scottish pro and a great teacher, and he has a theory about intention. And that if you can, it's not the only thing he talks about, but one of the things is if you externalize the intention. So you talk about the club and the ball. So it's a ball and a tool, and the tool has to do this, and the ball has to do that. You're not thinking necessarily about what your body's doing, are you? But if you look at so that is more like how you teach tennis or hockey or any other bat and ball game. You go, right, if you do this with the club, the ball will do that. And what we get muddled up with is elbow positions and hip positions and when do I slide and all of that. And if you you can't consciously control your body nearly as well as it can control itself. And this all started off by Timothy Galway in the 70s with the great game, with a great book called The Inner Game of Golf. He also wrote The Inner Game of Tennis, well worth a read. And he was always about awareness rather than the do instruction. So I think when you're behind a tree and you need to make the ball curve, you really have to do something with the club. to make it do that. And that's your focus. And that's external and less internal. I think that is part of the reason. Again, I don't claim to know exactly, but I think that that's certainly something that that I think is worth exploring, and is a reasonable explanation of why that happened. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Mm.
Galway talked about self one and self two. Self one is the sergeant major in your head, which says, "Don't hit it in the trees. Make sure you take a divot after the ball, and you hit, make this and that." And then self two is the natural athlete inside you, your subconscious swing. Let's call it your swing. So does your swing understand English? No. Would it be better left alone? Probably yes. How do we give self one a job? Well, we could make it count. One of Galway's great exercises was hit back when you at the top of the backswing, and hit when you hit the ball. And he got it from bounce hit, which is the tennis version, where you shout bounce as the ball bounces and hit as the ball gets struck by the racket. And he took beginners from not being able to get the ball over the net 3 times to long rallies of 20 shots or more just by doing that. And their self one had a job, which was to observe when the ball lands and observe when it hits. And actually, those are 2 things that could help self two much better than the do instruction. Like, make sure your elbows are in the right position. That's actually taking awareness away from the things that need to be attended to.
Yeah, I'm going to listen to self two a bit more. Just in terms of, you mentioned earlier on, Jeremy, about some of the wonderful courses you played. You talked about going up to Dornoch and Brora and places like that, and you mentioned playing at Brancaster. Sounders' ethos is to play well, and play well is not the number you write on a scorecard. It's really about the whole experience and what it gives you. Where and when in your golfing life have you been happiest?
That's interesting. I'd say Cleve Hill does it for me a lot, and it's a proper happy place. That is. My interesting golf architecture came actually when a friend of mine, Roddy Watkins, he said, he's a pro in Holland, and he said, "So what are your favourite courses then, Jeremy?" I went, Rye, because I played there with my brother, and he's won the President's Puzzle a couple of times. He's a member there. We had great times there. Rye, I like. I said, then Sunningdale New, which I think is actually better than the old course, although I understand that it's not everybody's preference, but I just think it's magnificent. The landscape is much more dramatic than the old, and the holes fit better, and also everything goes left to right, so that suits my sort of smother hook left-handed shot a bit better. And the Royal Hague, there's a marvellous links course in the Hague. He said, "Oh, that's interesting. They're all designed by the same guy, Harry Colt."
Harry Colt, yeah.
Yeah. I thought, oh, Harry Colt's worth finding out about then. Pre-internet, of course. So I bought, books, and realised that Mackenzie worked with Colt and had written, that's where I bought the Spirit of St Andrews, and read up on, golf course philosophy. And even then, I had very much the idea that, because at Goring, people would put bunkers in, and you go, well, why have you done that? It's all to protect the course and to make it more challenging. It's like, well, you didn't really do that, and it makes no sense what you've done. And anybody can make a course that nobody could play. I could, even as a kid, I was like onto that. But the books sort of taught me about what makes golf great, and I was able then to articulate what I felt about courses. I loved Dungeness. I played there on my own, sheep and cows, and I don't like. Well, no, let's put it another way. I like the idea of golf being accessible, like it is in Scotland. Anytime I go to Scotland, I'm struck by, wow, they really love golf. They really love golf, and they don't look at it. If you walk into the pub in your golf shirt, they don't go, "What the hell are you wearing that for?" They go, "Oh, have you had a good game then?" They want to know about where you play. Where did you play? And it's like, that's the barman that might even play golf. And places like Dornoch are, a proper golf town. So I think you get the vibe, and I think you share it actually, and I think it is very much a sounder ethos. We share these thoughts, I think. So I think naturalness, and also a place that encourages you to hit shots. It asks questions. That's the interesting bit. And the thing in front of you is the exam, for want of a better word, but it asks you to hit questions. that that are interesting, rather than defining shots. Anytime you hear somebody talk about definition in a course, you think, well, you haven't done your research, because nobody talks about that and knows anything about it. And in Mackenzie's book, not one moment do they talk about defining anything. He wants it undefined, so that you have all the freedom to choose. And that's what I love about Cleeve Hill, and I'm sure I'd love it about Royal North Devon and Brancaster as well. I'd like another go at that, because it was blowing a gale. But that kind of place.
Well, we will definitely get you to the cradle of English golf, Royal North Devon, before long, Jeremy. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. The one thing I was going to say, one of the things that makes me happy about playing somewhere is seeing juniors play. And as most people started as a junior, most golfers started as a junior, and your junior golf days are some of the most sort of halcyon of your golfing life. And I always think it's the mark of a healthy golf club if they have a big junior section and they treat juniors well and they encourage them, because you were a junior once and you talked about that. I think it's so important to ensure that young people starting out with a game, are made to feel encouraged and welcome.
I completely agree. I mean, we definitely do that at Felton Valley, where I coach. We've got got some wonderful young players, two brothers actually, Mason and Isaac Hayes. They're coming up fantastically well. But also in the summer holidays, the putting green's crowded, and the kids playing little putting competitions and chipping competitions, and they're treated like anybody else. It's not. And I think you want everybody to be treated well in a course, in a club. Yes, juniors. Yes, older people, ladies, men. It shouldn't matter. And golf should be accessible to everybody. And I'm associated with two clubs that really, really do that. So yes, I completely agree.
Well, that's great. So have you got a busy year ahead, Jeremy? I mean, I think you've performed in, is it something like 35 different countries? And I mean, how many shows are you likely to be doing in the year ahead? And where can people catch you?
It's gone up, actually. It's 43 now.
43. Wow.
It's taken me 25 years to do that, so I'm not going from pillar to post all the time. I was dead lucky, actually. Just recently, I did a show in Bahrain for the DP World Tour opening. So they had an opening event on Tuesday night. That was a really different one. The King of Bahrain was there, plus all the dignitaries and the tour officials as well. So that was fun, and that was actually a light show with music and a choir of kids singing and me doing trick shots along to it. So that was kind of fun. So you never know where you're going to go. Yes, full schedule. There's still gaps in it though. So if you want a show at your club, you know where to come. jeremydale.com. Sorry for doing that, but so I go all over the place, and it is a very random business though, and it is nice to pick up now. I would typically do 50 shows a year, and then teaching as well, obviously, and the YouTube stuff is very time consuming. I do my head editing, so that's a day a week. I'm also in a blues band as well. I picked up the guitar at the age of 50, so we do gigs at festivals and weddings and golf clubs and all sorts.
The vodka shots, is it not? The vodka shots.
That's it. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Catch the vodka shots at a venue near you. But Jeremy, it's been a great pleasure talking to you. I know you're somebody who really truly loves the game, and I think that's come through very strongly in everything you've said. And what an interesting career, ranging from caddying in the 84 Open to hitting trick shots with Seve and performing in front of the King of Bahrain. So thank you so much for your time, and look forward to hosting you at Royal North Devon very soon.
I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to This Golfing Life, a Sounder podcast. You can find out more about Sounder at soundergolf.com. If you want to follow me and find out more about RNGC, Britain's premier backyard golf course, you can find me on Instagram at RNGC2021. Thanks for listening.